My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 30 years old, and until a few weeks ago, I thought I knew exactly how love was supposed to look: steady, careful, predictable. My friends used to call me Cautious Clara because I never rushed into relationships. I was the type who double checked everything: plans, budgets, even feelings before stepping forward. But when I met Nathan Bennett, caution felt unnecessary. He was charming in that clean, practiced way that makes you forget to look for cracks. For 2 years, I believed I'd found something solid. Our engagement party was held at his father's country club. I'd always felt out of place there, like I needed permission to breathe. Everything gleamed: the glassware, the laughter, the money. Nathan's father, Gerald Bennett, an investment banker, was all smiles, but his eyes carried disapproval. The kind that says you're lucky to be chosen. I told myself it didn't matter. Love, I thought, could bridge class. Halfway through the evening, Nathan disappeared. I searched the ballroom, the terrace, even the garden where the lanterns swayed. When I finally pushed open the coat-room door, the sound I heard wasn't laughter. It was breathing. Soft, familiar, intimate. Nathan was standing with Davina Rowe, his ex-girlfriend, his hands around her waist, her lipstick smudged against his collar. They were kissing like teenagers who'd forgotten what consequence means. Davina saw me first, froze, and smiled faintly. Nathan turned, color draining from his face. "Clara," he started. "This isn't—" "Don't," I said. He sighed. "It's just a goodbye kiss. We have history. You're overreacting." I stared at him. Overreacting? "God, don't be so insecure," Davina chimed in. "You've got the ring, don't you? Relax." Something inside me cracked, but not loudly. It was the quiet kind of break that leaves the room still. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just nodded, turned around, and walked away. As I passed the ballroom, laughter swelled behind me. No one noticed the bride-to-be leaving her own party. At home, I packed methodically. A suitcase, a box, my breath steady but hollow. Then I took off the ring, an heirloom from Nathan's grandmother, and placed it on the counter. Beside it, I left a note. 2 words: goodbye, kiss. By 2 a.m., I was driving toward my friend Tessa's house, headlights cutting through fog like clarity through denial. The next morning, my phone vibrated nonstop. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. One from Gerald, furious. "You embarrassed my daughter. You humiliated this family." I muted the phone and poured myself coffee. For the first time in years, it tasted like freedom. And somewhere in that silence between pings, I realized something. Sometimes love doesn't end with a scream. It ends with a door closing quietly and a heart finally opening. The morning after the engagement party felt like standing in the wreckage of a storm I hadn't caused but still had to clean up. Messages kept piling in, Nathan's name flashing across my phone like a bad omen. First came the anger, then guilt, then manipulation disguised as concern. I didn't answer any of them. By noon, I was at the old apartment, moving the last of my things while he was at work. I left the spare key next to the ring I'd already returned. The place smelled like expensive candles and broken promises. When I locked the door for the last time, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like air. That afternoon, Gerald called again. His voice had switched tones from rage to fake civility. "Clara," he said smoothly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Let's talk like adults." "There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Bennett. Don't be hasty. Everyone makes mistakes. Nathan is very sorry." "Is he sorry it happened, or sorry I saw it?" Silence. Then, "Perhaps we can come to an arrangement." I laughed. "An arrangement?" He cleared his throat. "Compensation, if you will, for your emotional distress." "You're trying to pay me to marry your cheating son?" "I wouldn't phrase it that way," he said stiffly. "Then don't. Goodbye, Mr. Bennett." I hung up before he could finish his next sentence. The next day, Nathan showed up uninvited at my job site. I was knee-deep in design sketches for a client's new garden when his luxury sedan pulled up beside the truck. He got out wearing a pressed white shirt and a look of entitlement. "Can we talk?" he demanded. "I'm working," I said, gesturing toward the project team nearby. He ignored that. "You can't just walk out like this. We're engaged." "We're engaged," he scoffed. "You canceled everything? The vendors? The deposits? You can't do that." "I already did," I replied. My father's already invited his associates. Then maybe you and Davina can entertain them instead." His jaw tightened, and then right there in front of my client, he slapped me, a sharp, humiliating crack that echoed louder than his words. The shock hit before the pain. I didn't cry. I just stared at him. "Are you done?" I asked quietly. He blinked, realizing too late that everyone had seen it. His anger faltered. You never deserved me anyway." "No," I said softly. "I deserved honesty. You couldn't give it." He turned and stormed off. My client, a woman in her 60s, stood frozen a few feet away. After a moment, she said, "Do you want me to call the police?" I shook my head. "No, he just made sure I'll never regret walking away." That evening, my phone lit up with a new voicemail. Gerald again, this time calm, almost condescending. "Let's be reasonable, Clara. The wedding doesn't have to be canceled. Postpone it if you must. Don't destroy your future over one foolish mistake." I deleted the message, but something in his tone lingered. It wasn't fatherly concern, it was fear. The next morning, he proved it. He showed up at my office unannounced, sitting in the reception area like a wolf in a tailored suit. When I walked in, he smiled thinly. "We need to talk privately." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Inside the meeting room, he started casually flipping through my company's project portfolio. "I've been looking into your business," he said. "Impressive, especially for someone with your background." My stomach nodded. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You've bid on the Westview Park landscaping contract, haven't you? Quite a big deal for a small firm." I stayed silent. "I happen to sit on the board that approves those bids," he continued. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'd hate for your personal decisions to affect professional outcomes." I leaned forward. "Are you threatening my livelihood because I won't marry your son?" He shrugged. "Actions have consequences, Ms. Hayes." "One kiss isn't a mistake," I said sharply. "It's a revelation." Something flickered in his face. Panic, maybe. Then he stood and straightened his jacket. "Think about what you're doing, for all our sakes." And just like that, he left. The moment the door closed, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. I called Marcus, an old friend who worked for one of Gerald's contracting firms. "Can you check something for me?" I asked. "What's up?" "Gerald Bennett's company. Anything unusual?" He hesitated. "I'll see what I can find." An hour later, he called back. "Clara, how did you know? It's not public yet, but there are whispers. The SEC's sniffing around his firm. Something about discrepancies in their quarterly reports." And suddenly, everything made sense. Gerald's sudden desperation, his need for control, the obsession with appearances. He didn't just want a wedding, he needed it. A high society event would project stability while his empire quietly crumbled. I texted him one sentence, "I know about the SEC." He never replied. But the next morning, my company's bid for the Westview Park project was approved. No note, no apology. Just quiet confirmation that power had shifted. I thought the chaos was over. Until one night, as I was closing my laptop, a notification blinked on my phone. A message request from someone I didn't recognize. Ariel Vance. "Hi, Clara. You don't know me, but I think we've both been lied to by the same people. Devin's been cheating on me with your fiancé. For months, I have proof." I stared at the message for a long time, my pulse drumming in my ears. The betrayal had layers, and I'd only peeled the first one. I met Ariel Vance 2 days later at a quiet cafe near the edge of town, the kind of place where nobody asks questions, and the coffee tastes like truth. She was younger than I expected, early 20s maybe, with tired eyes and a polite smile that didn't quite reach them. When she slid her phone across the table, the screen was already glowing with the proof. Texts, photos, hotel confirmations, 6 months' worth of messages between Nathan and Davina. One of them stopped me cold. "Clara's good for now. Her business contacts are useful for my design launch. Once things settle, we'll figure out a way to be together publicly." I didn't speak for a full minute. Ariel kept watching me carefully, like she wasn't sure if I'd shatter or laugh. Finally, I said quietly, "So the kiss I caught wasn't goodbye. It was a celebration." She nodded. "The night before your engagement party, he told her he'd finally cut things off with me. She thought you'd never find out." It was strange. There was no anger left. just a dull clarity that felt heavier than grief. I'd spent 2 years building a future with a man who saw me as a stepping stone. Ariel reached for her drink. What are you going to do with this? I looked at the screenshots again. The lies, the manipulation, the arrogance. Nothing, I said. People like them eventually expose themselves. All I have to do is wait. 3 days later, the waiting ended faster than I expected. My phone buzzed with a new email. From Jessie, one of Nathan's closest friends. We'd always been civil. This time, her message was simple. Clara, I can't believe what she did to you. You deserve to know what's coming. Check your inbox. Attached was an invitation. Digital gold foil, elegant typography. The Freedom Celebration, hosted by Davina Rowe and Nathan Bennett. Location, Bennett Country Club. Dress code, all white, new beginnings. I actually laughed, out loud. The audacity was breathtaking. I didn't reply to Jessie. Instead, I forwarded the invitation to Gerald Bennett with no comment, no message, just the attachment. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Gerald's voice was tight, brittle. What do you want? Nothing, I said calmly. Just thought you should see what your daughter-in-law-to-be is planning while you're still begging me to fix your family's image. He hung up without another word. 2 nights later, Jessie called again, whispering like someone confessing a crime. You're not going to believe what happened. Try me. Gerald showed up at the party, uninvited. I smiled into the receiver. Of course he did. He dragged Nathan and Davina out by the arm, right in front of everyone. It was chaos. She screamed that he was ruining her brand, and he yelled back that she'd already ruined his name. Jessie's voice dropped. Then he told everyone the truth about the SEC investigation. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closed, letting the words sink in like a final chord in a long, exhausting song. Gerald's empire was crumbling, and Nathan's perfect world had finally cracked wide open. The following week, it hit the news. Bennett Capital Group under federal investigation for securities fraud. The headlines were relentless. Stocks plummeted. Their country club membership was temporarily suspended pending review. I didn't feel joy, just relief. Because now the truth was public, and I didn't have to carry it anymore. That same day, I received a long, emotional email from Nathan. He said he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, that Davina had manipulated him, that he needed someone who still believed in him. At the bottom, one line caught my eye. We could fix this, Clara. You always made me look grounded. There it was, the truth behind the apology. He didn't miss me. He missed what I did for his image. I hit delete. Meanwhile, the universe kept nudging poetic justice forward. Marcus called again. Remember that Westview Park project? The board approved 2 more phases. They want your firm to handle the expansions. I smiled. Guess who's not on the board anymore? He laughed. Gerald Bennett resigned this morning. That night, I sat outside on my porch with a cup of tea and watched the first cold rain of autumn soak the city. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the urge to check my phone. There was no one left to prove anything to. Just me, my work, and the quiet peace of knowing that walking away was the loudest thing I'd ever done. 3 months later, life had rebuilt itself, quietly, steadily, and on my own terms. My mornings started with coffee and the hum of the city, not with anxiety buzzing through notifications. My business was thriving. The Westview Park project had expanded into 2 new city contracts. I'd hired 3 more employees, leased a larger office, and for the first time since all of it began, I actually had time to breathe. Nathan's world, on the other hand, had collapsed spectacularly. Gerald Bennett had pleaded guilty to securities fraud. The country club, the site of our so-called perfect engagement party, was being auctioned off to pay debts. And Davina, his glamorous co-conspirator in chaos, had vanished from social media the moment the story broke. People told me she'd left him weeks ago, right after Gerald's arrest. Some said she'd moved in with a photographer in Malibu. Others said she'd been dropped by every brand she'd ever worked with. It didn't matter. For once, I didn't need to know the ending of someone else's story. Then one evening, it happened. I was at a restaurant downtown with Elliot, the architect I'd met through the Westview project. It wasn't a romantic dinner, not yet, just 2 people who understood long hours, tight deadlines, and the strange peace of starting over. We were halfway through dessert when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Clara?" I turned. Nathan. He looked thinner, older somehow, wearing a forced smile that didn't match the exhaustion in his eyes. "Wow," he said, glancing around the restaurant. "You look amazing." "Thanks," I said evenly. "Nathan, this is Elliot." Elliot extended a hand. "Nice to meet you." Nathan hesitated before shaking it, then turned back to me. "I've been meaning to call," he said, voice trembling between charm and desperation. "I wanted to apologize for everything." "You already did," I said. "But we never got closure. Maybe we could talk. Just the two of us." Before I could answer, a waiter appeared. "Nathan, your father's calling again," he said, holding out a phone. Nathan's forced smile faltered. "Tell him I'll call back." The waiter nodded and left, and for a second, Nathan's mask slipped completely. The panic was raw this time, not performative. "I have to go," he muttered. "But call me, okay?" "Sure," I said softly. "I'll call when I need another lesson in hypocrisy." He froze, blinked, and left without another word. Elliot raised an eyebrow when he was gone. "So, that's the famous ex?" "That's him," I said, exhaling. "He seems complicated." "That's one word for it." We both laughed. A week later, Jessie called. She sounded almost cheerful. "Guess what? Nathan's trying to start over. Says he's writing a book about redemption." "Good for him," I said, half amused. "But the best part? He's living with his mom now, and she's making him attend her church's support group for accountability." I couldn't help but smile. Gerald would have hated that. "Gerald's gone quiet," Jessie added. "No one's seen him since the sentencing." We hung up, and for a while I just sat in the calm. No rage, no revenge, just peace that didn't need to be earned. The ring Nathan once gave me had sat in a velvet box for weeks after I left him. One morning, I finally opened it, took a photo, and listed it for sale. When it sold, I donated half the money to a nonprofit that offers free wedding photography for low-income couples. The caption on the post said, "Sometimes you have to turn a symbol of lies into a picture of something real." It wasn't bitterness, it was closure. A few nights later, I brought home a rescue dog from a local shelter, a scrappy lab mix with caramel fur and too much energy. I named her Remy. She followed me everywhere, tail wagging, as if reminding me that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. One evening, I was sitting on my porch, Remy curled at my feet, when a message from Astrid, Nathan's sister, popped up. "I thought you overreacted back then, but after everything, holy hell, Clara, you dodged a nuclear missile." I smiled at the screen and typed back. "I didn't dodge it, I just stopped standing in its path." Then I set the phone down, looked out at the quiet street, and let the moment settle. The air was cool. The night was kind. For the first time, the future didn't scare me. Because that goodbye kiss Nathan thought would break me was really just the beginning of everything better.